Maserati, the definitive grand touring marque. No other brand lends itself better to the idea of driving a long way, fast, and looking cool while doing so.
But now Maserati is reinventing itself for the electric age, with a car that looks suspiciously like it's powered by petrol.
Yes, this is the all-new, all-electric Maserati GranTurismo Folgore. But there's a reason it looks like a petrol and, in its long bonnet, low roof and big grille, has traditional petrol styling cues.
Because it is a petrol, or at least it can be, just not at the same time. You see, when this car goes on sale in spring 2023, besides the electric one, you will be able to have it with a petrol, the twin-turbo V6 from the MC20 supercar, no less. This is Maserati's future strategy. No plug-in hybrids, either petrol or electric. But even allowing for that, this is a conservative shape. This is not Maserati ripping up the rule book.
Perhaps that's because it claims to have written it in the first place, with this, the A6 1500 from 1947. The first ever Grand Tourer, Maserati reckons. The rakish long bonnet coupe silhouette is one Maserati has successfully riffed on ever since. Well, apart from a significant lull in the 80s and 90s when the company embraced boxiness and nearly collapsed. Several times, but things got back on track with the 3200 GT in 1998, and the first GranTurismo in 2007 reinforced Maserati's status as perhaps the preeminent builder of Grand Tourers. That car had to soldier on a long time, eventually dying unreplaced in 2019. But Maserati clearly believes the Grand Tourer, the original long-range vehicle, is still relevant. But what about the sticky issue of actually driving a long way?
We will talk about it, but first let's give you a tour. We've talked a bit about the styling already. Personally, I'm really torn between thinking it's a lazy reinvention of the old one and a stroke of genius, because Maserati hasn't lost its touch, has it? This is a handsome machine, and most important of all, it wears this badge. But while we're here, let's open up this enormous clamshell bonnet. It's a work of art, all aluminium. The whole body is aluminium. You will note there is no frunk under here. In fact, owners of this car won't even be able to open the bonnet. But I wanted to show you underneath it to talk about the petrol versions, because there will be two. You'll be able to have a Modena with 483 horsepower or a Trofeo with 542. This Folgore, and you're going to have to get used to that name because that's the name that Maserati is putting on all its electric cars, has 750. And I know everyone's been banging on about this having 1200, but it doesn't.
The motors, 3 of them, 1 at the front and 2 at the rear, each develop 400 horsepower. 400 times 3 is 1200. So the motors can do it, but the battery can't. It can only send out enough electric to deliver 750. Think of it like an air restrictor for a petrol engine. What that does mean is that all 750 horsepower can go to any of the motors, the rear pair for maximum acceleration, or it can be divvied up between motors to do complex torque vectoring through corners.
It's not slow. 0 to 62 in 2.7 seconds when the fastest petrol takes 3.5. They're all four-wheel drive, by the way, mostly aluminium chassis, double wishbone front suspension and a multi-link rear axle. We need to talk a little bit about the aerodynamics, because although the petrol and electric versions look near identical, they've cleaned up the electric one so it's slightly slipperier through the air. 0.26 drag factor instead of 0.28. We also need to talk about space, because that's vital for any Grand Tourer worth its salt. So let's see if we can get the boot open. Should go in a second. Yep, look, all electric. 270 litres of space in there, and I apologise about the red cord. It's part of the prototype thing, just in case we can't get it open. It's got a slightly higher boot floor in the electric because of the packaging of the motors and the inverters, but it goes back a long way. It's pretty decent. Right, let's close that back down and have a look inside. Right, we're going to start with the back seats, because outwardly I don't even think this looks like a four-seater, and yet you get in And the packaging's remarkable. There's actually genuinely space for 4 adults in here. Now, I know you're thinking, it's an electric car. Where are the batteries when the floor's low and the roof line's low? Where are the batteries? Well, they're cleverly packaged. They're down the transmission tunnel, and then there's a T-shape of them across the front. So it's like an inverted T-shape. Right, let's teleport into the front, where I can't show you very much because it's all under embargo. So I'm looking at the dashboard of this car, but I'm not allowed to show you it, but I can talk about it a bit. So you've got buttons on the steering wheel for the start, stop, and the drive mode switch. And then you've got a lot of complexity, a lot of little buttons up here. But the driving position is fabulous, actually. It's really good. And the seats, although they don't look that supportive, really are, actually. You feel quite snug into them. Over here, you've got this 2-stage screen. It's sort of angled. It goes like that and then like that. The upper part does all the functionality. Lower part does the HVAC system. What you are missing, though, is the old carriage clock thing that Maseratis used to have. Now you've got some circular, sort of like Porsche's Sport Chrono thing. Right, that's the interior in a very short form. Let's go and have a drive, shall we? So first things first, is it easy to drive? Is it comfortable? Because that is the essence of a Grand Tourer. And yeah, actually, it all feels very together, very commensurate with the sort of car you're expecting it to be. Of course, it's very difficult to judge the ride when all you're on is a very smooth racetrack. But it all feels rather nicely damped. You know, you swing it around through here and you've got a little bit of roll just to let you know, but it doesn't feel like you're in anything particularly aggressive. You know, there is a bit of body movement in it, and yet the movements feel natural and precise. But we do need to talk about the sticky issue of range, because that for a Grand Tourer is surely the essence of it. This thing weighs 2,260 kilos and has a drag factor of 0.26, which is okay, but it's not outstanding. That's a 93 kilowatt hour battery pack, and of that, 83 kilowatt hours is usable capacity. I thought they'd be claiming a range of about 250 miles for this, but actually the WLTP figure is 280 miles. Okay, that still means you're not going to be smashing out France on a one-stop strategy, but that's better than I thought it would be. That means they must have got some good efficiencies from the motors and the battery, but only when you're cruising. If you smash it, this thing's going to be out of juice in 100 miles. As it is, I think you'll be doing quite well to get 200 miles out of it. And I know Maserati can bang on all they like about it going a 10 to 80% charge in 10 minutes thanks to its 800-volt architecture, but you try finding the charger that'll do that. So let's find out what it's like when we go a bit harder, shall we? Does it feel and behave like a Maserati? Does it engage you? I mean, my experience of these cars is so wrapped up in their engines. The old 4.7 litre V8 was such an interesting and exciting engine. It wasn't the most powerful, but my God, it was strident and magnificent when it did it. Right, we'll change modes now. So we've been in GT, which gives you 80% of the power. Let's go for Sport, which is 100% of the power. It's just got so much shove. Look, 140 Ks, 160 Ks, that's 100 miles an hour, 110, 120. Wait, it doesn't let up. That pace is intense, and it doesn't let up. And it doesn't let up until, well, they claim 100 and over 200 miles an hour. The brakes are very natural feeling. I'm really impressed with this. You cannot tell the handover point between the electric regen, which is up to 0.65 G, 400 kilowatts they can reharness through the braking, and the wheel brakes when they cut in. It feels very natural. The exception is when you're really, really hard on them on track, when you're right at the bite of it, you just want a little bit more power from the brakes, but they're steel brakes. It's 2,260 kilos, and it's a GT car. They're not expecting it to do that. And if you can hear all that little beeping and stuff in the background, that is the indicators, which are currently set to it. Come on, as soon as you get 0.5 G of deceleration, they come on. Actually, in production ones, it'll be set much higher than that. But the important thing to remember is this car is on what they call a B-type tyre, which means it's been spec'd for low rolling resistance and rolling noise. those indicators are quite annoying, and we're starting to run into some understeer here. So let's go for Corsa mode, and then we can show you a little bit of a trick here, because if I go into the settings here, I might have to take a second to do this, drive mode, I can stick it into drift mode. Right, the torque vectoring seems to have figured out that I want to slide a bit. And it's... Oh, I quite like this. Hadn't expected it to be like that, but it's that 50-50 weight distribution is suddenly feeling quite playful. I mean, it's slightly artificial because you can tell as soon as you come off the throttle a bit, it's trying to go, it's second guessing you, it's figuring out that you want to, you might want a bit more grip at the front, so it's feeding power back to the front. Yeah, you can't be smooth with your steering inputs. You're trying to second guess the motors a bit and see what they do, but it it is bloody good though. It really is. Right, should probably behave. It's a GranTurismo. It's not a drift machine, although it does drift rather well. But the chassis balance is great. Considering that all that weight you'd imagine from the T-shaped battery is at the front, it resists understeer really well. The interesting thing here though is how this will compare with the petrol, because this is 450 kilos heavier than the petrol, and I think the petrol, with all the lovely noise and everything it'll make, and will dance around a track very nicely indeed, I suspect. In fact, the chief engineer did say lap times, this thing has the edge for acceleration, actually quite a bit quicker, but lap times are going to be very, very even. But this feels more together than any Maserati GranTurismo I've ever driven. It has that same sort of fluency as the MC20 supercar, which was such a lovely surprise. And this car has that same sort of finesse and balance to it. So what are the rivals? Well, I can only really think of one at the moment. That's the Porsche Taycan. It's a completely different type of car, but there's just not very many other cars like this out at the moment, which actually puts Maserati in a good place, because they're the market leaders, if you like. They're at the cutting edge of this. They define the terms by which the class will be judged. I'm impressed, Maserati. Well done.
The GranTurismo is the first. Folgore versions of the MC20 supercar and Grecale SUV will follow, and all Maseratis will have an EV version by 2025. By 2030, there will be no more petrols. And that makes me sad. This isn't Rolls-Royce, where the electric switch makes perfect sense. Maseratis should be more strident and higher strung, have an edge of drama. As yet, this one doesn't have all the answers, but at least it does have a compelling USP.
Look, if Grand Touring was still a thing, I'd be nervous, but the days of blasting across Europe have gone. They've especially gone for EVs. So the GranTurismo is being reinvented as an everyday supercar, less ostentatious and more habitable than a mid-engine machine, but still exclusive and desirable. And this one is guilt-free, emissions-free, and has stolen a march on every rival. They're all going to be playing catch-up. And this is going to take some catching.